What's up, guys? I'm back. A couple hours later. I'm Toad. It's Better Off Dead. NFL Week 3 is what I'm going to be talking about. It is late as hell. I am a total degenerate right now. I don't know what I'm even doing. What am I doing? Pulling an all-nighter. Gambling up late. Being a massive degenerate. Holy shit. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. Why am I doing this? Let's get into it. First play, Cleveland Browns -3. What am I doing to myself? I'm getting no sleep, and I'm going to be taking the Cleveland Browns. Who is going to want to take the Cleveland Browns, man? After everything that's gone on from Monday night and forward until now, we could see here, by the way, people, I think, are tending to think that the Titans are a nice value play here. We can see 61% of the tickets and 60% of the cash taking the Titans as the underdog, plus now 3.5. There's still threes out there, so I'm taking the Browns -3. I just grabbed it. They're still out there at a few places, at least from what I found, but it is going up right now to 3.5. But the average bettor, they're going to want nothing to do with the Browns. They're going to see that the Browns are favored and think, what is going on here? Like, how could you not play the Titans after everything that we just saw happen over the past less than a week here? We saw the Titans play pretty well on Sunday at home against the Chargers. The Titans were able to win that game against the Chargers. Their defense looked pretty good. People think the Chargers are a pretty good team. I mean, yeah, they are. They have a lot of offensive weapons for sure. Titans were able to get it done. It's a pretty big win for the Titans, man. So that's what people saw. And then, of course, Monday night, what did they say? Cleveland basically could not have looked any worse. And star running back, one of the best in the NFL, Nick Chubb, not only got hurt, but he went down. One of the most gruesome injuries that I can remember seeing, man. This was like Joe Theismann-esque, where it looked like he got tackled low and high by two guys in opposite directions at once. His leg, I guess his foot was like planted. His leg got bent the complete and wrong direction. Insane, man. I'm assuming it's a broken leg. He's out for the season. This is just crazy. Insane. And, of course, I had a bet on the Pittsburgh Steelers in that game. It won, but I liked the handicap there, but I think I got lucky with that Steelers win there, because if you look at that game, I don't think the Steelers really had much business winning that game. There were a lot of bad mistakes by the Browns. It wasn't just the Chubb injury, but Deshaun Watson just did not play well at all. There were way too many mistakes. He threw a couple of picks. I think a couple. There were a couple of really bad turnovers on the part of the Browns. But all of that makes me want to take the Browns this week. I know it sounds crazy. You got to be counterintuitive. You got to be a bit contrarian. Of course, I am a contrarian here. I mean, how much more contrarian can you get? I got my new Indianapolis Colts jersey here, and I may or may not be talking about the Colts coming up next year, but even though I am a Boston guy and I root for the Boston proper teams, I have rooted against the Patriots for quite a while now, and Indy is my team. Hate me if you want. Got the Jonathan Taylor drip flowing right here. But yes, the Cleveland Browns. So what are we doing here? What are we talking about? So the line is 3. Why is it 3? Well, the books are basically saying that these teams are kind of about even, but we're going to give the Browns home field advantage, essentially. That's about what you would say with this number like this, 3 points for home field. Is that the case? Well, actually, I think the Browns are like a slightly better team. And I think that the Chubb injury, well, yes, it definitely is a factor. Running backs, as we've seen like over the past few years in the NFL, they've been like pretty interchangeable, man. Like, it has more to do with like the system, the schemes, strategy. Even though, yes, you have running backs that are like super talented, like Chubb, who are obviously a decent amount above who their replacement is going to be. Even so, you see teams fill in for those running backs, and they don't really need to get downgraded that much, man. And as we saw after Chubb went out, Ford, his backup, Ford, he was running a lot better than the vehicles from the manufacturer of the same name. Even though I do drive a Bronco, let's put that out there. Ford actually looked pretty good in that game. He's going to be their starter again, and I think he's going to fill in just fine. I think their running game will be just all right. It'll be fine. And they have Kareem Hunt back again. He's back on the team. I don't know if that really matters. I don't think the running game is going to need to get downgraded that much. And I think the line is telling you something here. The line is telling you that they're not going to downgrade Cleveland that much here, but I still think that it's a little bit of an overreaction here. And what you see with an injured player, a star injured player like this, when the star goes down, you will see the line kind of react too much, and you'll get value on that team. But not only that, but you'll see the team in that first game really come out and play hard, knowing that star player is out. It's the injured player theory, and they'll come in and really push in that next game. And I think that is going to be the case here for the Browns. They're coming off that Monday night performance, even though, yes, it's a short week, and yes, they played the Steelers, a division rival. Just the way that happened, man, pretty much an embarrassing performance, and they're going to want to pick it up for their injured teammate there. All of that just is going to put me on the Browns here. And Tennessee, coming off a decent win there over the Chargers. And Tennessee has the Cincinnati Bengals up next. And even though the Bengals have started 0-2, I think that's still a big game. It's a rematch of the playoff matchup from 2 years ago where Cincinnati eliminated Tennessee from the playoffs that year in that overtime game with that field goal. That was the year Cincinnati wound up beating the Chiefs after that and then getting to the Super Bowl. I think Tennessee might still have that a little bit in the back of their minds too. So they might be looking ahead a little bit to that Cincinnati game. They might not totally be taking the Browns seriously. That's another thing here. They saw what the Browns did on Monday night. Really did not look good. People are going to forget how good they looked against Cincinnati in week 1 as well. And they're going to say, hey, Chubb is out. Tennessee, there's a chance Tennessee takes them a little bit lightly here. So Cleveland Browns -3. That's going to be one of the plays. Next up, I told you it was coming. I told you it was going to happen. We're going to look at the Indianapolis Colts. Oh, no, my Indianapolis Colts +7.5. And you can see here, there's just a lot of action all going for the Baltimore Ravens here. 84% of the tickets and 80% of the money, man. It's just lopsided action on the Ravens. It's moved up a bit. You might be able to get 8. It's 7.5 out there right now. I don't think there's much of a difference between 7.5 and 8. 7 and 7.5 being the key numbers. So as long as you get at least 7.5, I think it's good here. And what we're looking at here, this is a situation where I think the Ravens are in a little bit of a sandwich spot here, which is what I like to look at, where they're coming off a big game and they have another pretty big game next. What we have with the Ravens have started out on fire this season. They're 2-0, but of course, I don't know how much stock we should put into the first win that they had. They beat the Houston Texans at home. Houston is probably the worst team in the AFC. Don't know if that really matters that much, but the Baltimore did look quite good. It was a pretty dominant win. But what did they do last week? Said, okay, off of that win, week 2 now, and they had to face Cincinnati off of that bad week 1 loss to the Browns. And I expected Cincinnati to have a nice bounce back last week in week 2. Cincinnati, man, just not good. They pretty much got rolled over by the Ravens. The Ravens went into Cincinnati, and these are pretty much known as the top 2 teams in that division. There's not that much of a dispute that these are the top 2 teams in the AFC North. Cincinnati was kind of expected to right the ship there and maintain their I don't want to say dominance, but their status as the best team in that division that they've held on to for the last couple of years. Baltimore went in and said, nah, I don't think so. Went in and were able to win that game pretty convincingly. That's a pretty big win for Baltimore. And now off of that, what happens? They come home and they have to face the lowly Colts. And up next, they have the Browns. So another division rivalry, even though, as I was just talking about, the Browns didn't look good on Monday night. Browns are still considered to be an improved team. They're still a division rival. I think the Ravens still might have one eye ahead on that game, but I still think this is a big letdown after that big win over the Bengals. Because you remember the Bengals, I'm pretty sure the Bengals were a team that kind of took the Ravens out last year too, if I remember correctly. So everything about that game was a big win for the Ravens. This is a big letdown. And they got Indianapolis, and Indianapolis is in a situation where they don't really know what's going on with their quarterback right now. Anthony Richardson got hurt at the end of week 1 because he was running the ball probably too recklessly, even though he was trying to get into the end zone at the end of that game. And Indianapolis had been covering and winning outright for a lot of that game against Jacksonville, and I guess we won't talk about that, even though I didn't bet that one. I lost a pick in my pools on Indianapolis failing to cover the spread against Jacksonville in week 1. Richardson could have gotten into the end zone late in that game to at least get back within the number there to cover the spread after they had fallen down 2 scores, after they had blown the lead all in the fourth quarter. But Richardson got hurt, wound up out of the game. They very well could have scored a touchdown maybe if he hadn't had to leave the game. Last week, I believe he was back, was playing, and then he got injured yet again, and now he's in concussion protocol. As far as I know, he did not practice today, so we don't know what Richardson's status is. However, so that's, I think, factoring into the number here as well, but I don't think it's going to factor in that much, and I think the assumption in this number right now might be that he's not going to play, but I don't know, because I don't think there's going to be that much of a downgrade, and I don't think there should be, and I still like the Colts play either way because the backup for him is Gardner Minshew, and he's a guy with a pretty decent amount of NFL experience now. He's been a backup for a while, but he's filled in and had to be a starter for like large chunks of seasons with, I believe, with Jacksonville and I think with the Eagles maybe. He's been around, and he's been fairly good when he's played, so I don't think that's much of a factor there. This is a lot of points here. Indianapolis, even though they haven't looked that good defensively, I think they could still play decent defense here. Obviously, nobody's going to be putting that much stock into their good performance they had last week. They beat the Houston Texans on the road, which I think everybody's already probably going to forget about that. Everybody loves what Baltimore's doing right now. So, yeah, mostly this is a bad spot for Baltimore. I think definitely get some value on the Indianapolis Colts here. Colts plus 7.5. We'll go with that. And the final of the 3 plays here, and I might give out some other opinions here at least. The Las Vegas Raiders, minus 2.5, and this one has gone up, and you see it's 3 at some books now. And you can see here there's definitely lopsided action here. You can see the money has moved in the direction against where the ticket count is, 56% on the Pittsburgh Steelers, but 72% of the money completely on the other side on the Raiders. I don't think I'd want to lay 3 or more than that. But I think there's been a lot of play from the professionals on the Raiders' money line when it came out because they were like minus in the 120-something ballpark, probably money line, and it got driven up to like minus 140, maybe something around there. I wouldn't be opposed to the Raiders' money line, but like north of 140, I think if you can get the spread under 2.5, I think that's a better way to go because you're still basically just betting them kind of just win the game at minus 2.5. So that's what I like, the Raiders minus 2.5. And what's going on here? Why do I like them? I mean, I kind of alluded to some of that when I was talking about the Steelers Monday night game. So let's get it. Well, the Steelers, they played the Monday night game, and it was a pretty big win. I mean, Steelers looked awful in week 1. They just got absolutely trounced at home in week 1 by the 49ers, who definitely look like they're one of the top teams in the NFL, which is not surprising to anybody. Steelers came out Monday night and won a bet for me on Monday night this past week. Beat the Cleveland Browns. Nobody really wanted the Steelers in that game. After week 1, the Browns had completely dominated the Bengals. The Steelers had looked just like they couldn't do anything right against 49ers. Come out Monday night. They play a pretty close game. Had the lead for, I think, a majority of the game. And they beat the Browns. But like I was talking about when I was talking about the Browns, there were a lot of turnovers that factored into that game. I think the Steelers got a bit lucky there. They didn't really play that well. Pickett has still not really been doing that much. Najee Harris has not been doing that much. Their offense still kind of looks like a train wreck. They're not able to score that many points. But I think that even though people saw that game because it was on primetime, I think people might put too much stock into what the result of that game was. The most recent result we have here, where the Steelers did just beat the Browns. It was a good home win, even though it was a lot on turnovers and stuff. People will still take that as, hey, the Steelers kind of played like a good game, got a pretty good win here. So now it looks like, and as I showed you with the ticket percentage, it looks like people are kind of buying into the Steelers a little bit now, or maybe more so, they're not buying into the Raiders at all, because the Raiders just looked pretty awful this past week. But of course, it was at Buffalo, and Buffalo is a much better team than the Raiders. So I think that has a lot to do with it. So the Raiders are coming off a game where they just got wrecked. So that leads me to believe that there's a little bit of value in the Raiders. And, of course, we've lost a little bit of it because I didn't come in like when they were pick 'em or play the money line or anything like that. But I still like this at 2.5. This is also going to be the Raiders' home opener for the season, I'm pretty sure. So I think the crowd's going to come out. I think it's going to be like a decent crowd there. I think it's somewhat of a bad spot for Pittsburgh because it's a short week because they just played on Monday night and a tough game against the Browns, and they have to go out to the Pacific Coast now. And I think that East Coast teams traveling west, I think it's a worse situation than the opposite, even though everybody tends to talk about the opposite, where it's, oh, these West Coast teams have to go east, and now they're playing, like an early time, their time. I think it's worse when an East Coast team has to go west, and they're playing this like extremely late game biologically for them, and that's what's happening here, because this is a Sunday. I'm pretty sure this is the Sunday night game, which is a pretty ugly game for a Sunday night game. It's unfortunate for football fans everywhere, I suppose. Who wants Steelers Raiders in a standalone primetime matchup? Nobody wants that shit. But anyway, yeah, and then all right, you got the Raiders. So I think they're in the bounce back spot. They're the Steelers. I think coming off that Monday night game, I think it's not really that great of a spot for them. It's going to be a bit of a letdown spot for them. They don't really have a look ahead here because they do play the Texans next, so that's not really much of anything. But I think it's a tough spot for the Steelers overall. The market is definitely moving on Vegas and liking that, even though Vegas definitely has question marks. But in week one, I mean, I guess they did okay. They went into Mile High, and that was a game that I didn't really expect them to win out there, that game. And even though their offense really didn't do much of anything, they were still somehow able to win that game against Denver, who has not looked very good so far at all. But, yeah, so this is mostly a fade of Pittsburgh more than anything else. Las Vegas, the Raiders, -2.5. And now we can look at maybe a couple of the other leans that I have here, maybe a couple of the other opinions that I might have here. Some of these standalone games here. Tomorrow night, another just horrible Thursday night game, Giants 49ers. 49ers up to a double-digit favorite. I would not lay 10 with the 49ers. I mean, the 49ers have looked way too good in their two games, really, and the Giants have looked really awful in their two games, so I'm not going to touch it, but there's going to be no value to be had on the 49ers there, I wouldn't think. It's a lot of points, and I don't even know who the 49ers have scheduled next, but it might be a game where they're coming off a division game against the Rams. They might not be paying that much attention there. So that would be my opinion on that one. I don't know if I have too many other opinions to really give out on any of these here, except I did have at least one more if we look at the Monday night. So for some reason we have two Monday night games. I don't know what the NFL is doing. I don't know if this is something they've done. I thought that in recent years on the first Monday night, they just had a doubleheader with two games. But now it's not even a doubleheader because one game starts in the middle of when the other game is being played. I don't know, but 2 weeks in a row now we have two Monday night games. Whatever. Eagles, Buccaneers. I'm not going to play it, but I can tell you, and you can see here, 69% of the tickets on the Eagles. Everybody loves the Eagles. I mean, they're the Super Bowl loser last year, one of the best teams in the NFL last year, but coming into this year, like I said, when I bet against them and unfortunately lost, as I ranted about last week by basically a point with the Patriots in week one, the Eagles, they lost both coordinators from last year, defensive and offensive coordinators. So I think there is, kind of like a learning curve to be had there. So even though they are 2-0, I think there is that aspect of it. And I think maybe they overperformed a bit last year for what their talent level is, even though they are a good team. But yeah, 69% of the tickets here, 56% of the cash going completely the other way on the Buccaneers. You see the line has gone down from 6.5 to 5. I think you might still be able to get a 5.5 or maybe even 6 at different places. I can tell you, I know that there are a lot of professionals taking the Tampa Bay Bucks here. It's, again, one of those classic spots, again, where it's a Monday night game where you're getting a lot of points with a home underdog here. And that used to be a better situation like several years back, but the books have kind of adjusted to it. But in a game like this, I still think that like the Eagles are a very popular team. So I lean to the Buccaneers here, but I don't know if it's bettable because the situation doesn't really quite lend itself to it because the Buccaneers have started out 2-0 too, and people are kind of liking what they're seeing out of them, and people like Baker Mayfield again for some reason, even though I've never thought that he's that good. But yet I do lean to the Buccaneers in that one. And then just a comment on Rams-Bengals here, which is the other game. It's a bit odd here that you see the Bengals. They would have been a 7-point favorite here, and now it's down to 2.5. And I don't know if this was the look ahead before the games happened last week, because now what we saw the Bengals not look very good against the Ravens in their game last week, week 2. And Joe Burrow, I think, is questionable right now. I think he had some injury, but my guess would be that he is going to play, but it looks like this number is kind of indicating that the books are thinking that he might not. I think Burrow's questionability and what the Bengals did last week. The Bengals not looking good last week is factoring in a little bit, but I think Burrow's questionability is factoring in a lot more. And even though you could see a higher percentage of the cash would be on the Rams, I think this is too low on the Bengals. Like, I've thought that the Bengals have been overrated the last couple of years, like getting too much love for what they are. People like, Burrow and Jamar Chase, and they like some of those flashy offensive players. I went against them, in the playoffs a couple of times the last couple of years, thinking they were a bit overvalued, and I was right on more of those games than I was wrong. I'm pretty sure, I had the Rams in even though the Rams didn't cover, unfortunately, in that Super Bowl, but, I had the Chiefs against the Bengals last year in the playoffs, whatever. I would only take the Bengals if the number is this low, and if Burrow's out, you kind of get that injured player theory aspect coming to it. The Bengals are 0-2 and just being very undervalued here. The Rams have looked a lot better than people expected. They beat the Seahawks in the first game in a nice upset, which I believe was on the road. And then they had a home game last week, and they made a nice comeback. They played pretty competitively against the 49ers and then didn't really they didn't give up at the end, and they scored again at the end to get back within the number, at least to cover the spread. But they stayed competitive in that game against a good 49ers team. So people are liking what they see out of the Rams. But the Rams coming off of 2 tough division games like that makes that another like kind of bad spot for them, having to travel and play on the road against non-conference opponents, which is kind of that's like the least important game on a schedule, because the tiebreakers all have to do with like your conference opponents instead. And they don't have a conference game up next, but they do have the Eagles up after that. But anyway, I would lean to the Bengals there if the line is that low. Just putting a comment out there on that. But the plays, if you want to make them official, bunch of like all of these are like ugly plays that you probably would not want to even touch with a 10-foot pole. And those tend to be the plays that I want to be on, man, because that just tends to be where the value is going to be. Cleveland Browns -3, Indianapolis Colts +7.5, and Las Vegas Raiders -2.5. Oh, boy. Feels ugly. I don't even feel great about it, but that's what it's going to be. I am Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Once again, you can ask me questions on there, whatever. I'll try to respond. Over in DMs on Twitter, whatever. Interact with me on tweets. I tweet about a lot of libertarian stuff that you might not like. You might not like my horrible political opinions over there either. You can comment on the YouTube videos, though, as well. Try to respond there as well. Tower Gang Toad, follow the Tower Gang podcast, where we get extremely offensive and say things that are way more offensive than I'm going to bet the Cleveland Browns -3. So if you're offended by that, oh boy. Buckle up, buddy. Grow some balls. Go watch the Tower Gang podcasts. Tower Gang Pod everywhere. Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, Spotify. TowerGang.locals.com to support us with some money. And that is it, I think. This has been Better Off Dead, and I might as well be dead right now. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. Holy hell. Peace out, guys.